You walk into a room and immediately scan for who needs help. And your friend mentions stress, and before they finish talking, you've already mapped their entire solution. Your partner sighs, and you're ready with a plan to solve whatever's wrong, even if they didn't ask. You cancel your own therapy appointment to help someone move. You skip sleep to finish a coworker's project. You feel guilty taking a day off because someone might need you. Sound familiar? You're not generous. You're not selfless. You're trapped in a pattern psychologists call savior complex, and it's destroying you from the inside out. Where does this come from? Why can't you stop? And what happens when the person you need to save is yourself? The clinical term appeared in psychology literature in 1974 when Herbert Freudenberger published his paper on burnout. He identified a subset of helpers whose need to save others wasn't about altruism, but about filling an internal void. By the 1980s, researchers at the University of California documented that 38% of mental health professionals exhibited what they termed helper syndrome, a compulsive need to rescue that stemmed from unresolved childhood wounds. January 2025. Research published by Yvonne Castaneda in Psychology. Today identified 3 core roots. First, unpredictable childhood environments where you had to become the fixer to create safety. Second, cultural and religious conditioning that taught you self-sacrifice equals virtue. Third, attachment trauma where your worth became tied to usefulness. The savior doesn't just want to help, the savior needs to be needed. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Modern Psychological Studies Journal published in 2025, examining savior complex through light triad personality research conducted at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and from clinical studies in European. Psychiatry's June 2018 meta-analysis covering 9,409 mental health professionals across 62 studies. Now back to the information. A study at Boston University in December 2024 found that trauma physically changes your brain. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes hyperactive. The prefrontal cortex, your decision-making region, shows reduced function. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk documented this in his Body Keeps the Score research. When you grow up in chaos, you learn one survival strategy: control the environment by controlling other people's problems. Fix them, and maybe you'll finally be safe. The pattern starts young. Psychologists identified it in 1973 when Salvador Minuchin coined the term parentification. You're 8 years old caring for your depressed mother. You're 10 mediating your parents' fights. You're 12 raising your younger siblings. Your childhood gets stolen and replaced with adult responsibilities you're not equipped to handle. A 2023 study in psychology. Today interviewed women who experienced role reversal. They described living in constant survival mode. Hypervigilant, alert all the time. Never resting because the next crisis could hit any moment. One participant said her mother was still 5 years old emotionally. She spent her entire childhood protecting a parent who should have protected her. Research published in Clinical Psychology between 1997 and 2016 across 11 databases found that emotional parentification, not instrumental tasks like cooking or cleaning, causes the damage. Emotional parentification, where you become your parent's therapist or spouse, correlates with depression, anxiety, somatic symptoms like headaches, aggression, interpersonal difficulties, and academic failure. A 2022 integrated review in a public health database analyzed studies on parentification across 3 continents. 21 studies on depressive symptoms showed emotional parentification consistently linked to depression. 5 studies, positive correlation, versus 1 null finding. But here's the twist. Instrumental parentification, the practical tasks, showed 3 null findings versus 1 positive. It's not the chores. It's being your parent's emotional support system. It's the boundary violation. It's the role confusion. A 2015 critical review in Science Direct noted that parentification ranges on a spectrum. At the adaptive end, developmentally appropriate responsibilities build character. At the destructive end, you lose your childhood and carry those patterns into every relationship for the rest of your life. Psychologist Sarah Benson from a study cited in The Swaddle notes that emotionally healthy people don't have a compelling need for validation through rescuing others. If you're drawn to people who desperately need help, if you sacrifice your own needs constantly, you're not being noble. You're reenacting childhood trauma. David Bennett, a counselor, explains it clearly. Relationships should be mutually enjoyable, give and take. If you enter a relationship to change your partner, they're a project, not a partner. The data backs this. A January 2025 study at Insights Life Management Science Labs distinguished codependency from attachment. Codependency means your self-worth depends on your partner's validation. You no longer know who you are outside the relationship. Attachment is different. It's the natural human need for connection formed in infancy. The line between them? Motivation. Healthy attachment comes from security. Codependency comes from fear and unmet childhood needs. You believe someone out there can single-handedly fix everything. That person is you. It ties to moral masochism. You sabotage yourself for supposed moral purposes. Julie Williamson, a counselor, offers an example. Your partner has a drug or alcohol problem. You refuse to leave because they need you. That's enabling, not helping. Your presence alone cannot fix a serious health condition. But you stay because leaving feels like abandonment, and you learned as a child that your job is to prevent abandonment at all costs. The pattern infects every corner of your life. At work, you're the person who never says no. You take on extra projects while your own deadlines slip. You cover for colleagues who take advantage. At home, you're the emotional janitor. Someone vents, and you immediately start problem solving, even when they just wanted to be heard. You give advice nobody asked for. You insert yourself into conflicts that don't involve you. In friendships, you're the on-call therapist. Middle of the night texts, crisis after crisis. You show up exhausted while your own needs go unmet. And here's the cruelest part. When people don't show gratitude or when your help doesn't work, you don't pull back. You double down. Because the savior complex isn't about them. It's about you. It's about proving you're good enough, worthy enough, lovable enough. Every rescue attempt is evidence you matter. If I fix their pain, they'll love me. The relationship becomes conditional, not based on acceptance, but on fixing. And when that doesn't work, resentment grows. Boundaries erode. The savior feels unappreciated and depleted. The irony is brutal. You help because you want connection, but the way you help destroys connection. Clinical psychologist Judy Ho explains it. If your partner thrives, so do you. If your partner fails, you fail too. You're so afraid of losing them, you tolerate terrible, even abusive behaviors just to keep them in your life. October 2023. Research in what is codependency analyzed attachment styles and codependency through the lens of John Bowlby's attachment theory from the 1980s. For codependents, the task of individuation, separating from your parents and becoming your own person, never completes. Much of the suffering comes from incomplete separation individuation that should happen in toddlerhood. The conflicting needs for maternal attachment versus autonomy create power struggles in childhood that continue into adult relationships. Boundaries become impossible to distinguish and establish. People with anxious attachment, most codependents, view others positively but see themselves as unworthy and unlovable. They internalize their caretaker's behavior as shaming. They inferred they're not good enough, lovable, or worthy. Their self-esteem suffers. They're uncomfortable being alone. They believe relationships will validate their lovability and provide the acceptance they lack internally. In relationships, they're dependent, insecure, needy, and want complete closeness. And here's the trap. Since relationships reflect self-assessments, anxious attachers often bond with avoidant people whose attachment style matches their childhood experience. The dance of intimacy between an anxious pursuer and an avoidant distancer reenacts the earlier mother-child drama. The toll on your body and mind is measurable. A June 2018 systematic review in European Psychiatry analyzed 9,409 mental health professionals across 33 studies. The pooled prevalence for emotional exhaustion was 40%. Depersonalization was 22%. Low personal accomplishment was 19%. Burnout isn't just feeling tired. Herbert Freudenberger defined it in 1974 as depletion of energy experienced by professionals when they feel overwhelmed by the problems of others. Maslach and Jackson refined it. Emotional exhaustion, feeling overburdened and depleted of emotional and physical resources. Depersonalization, a negative, cynical attitude toward people, diminished sense of personal accomplishment. Mental health workers in a Spanish study published in Public Health in 2023 showed that 4 professionals had full burnout syndrome. 35 showed tendency toward burnout, 15 showed no burnout. Emotional exhaustion and low personal achievement were the most affected domains. Results showed burnout predicted stigmatizing attitudes more than profession, work setting, or country. The personal achievement dimension was especially relevant. When you burn out, your ability to provide genuine care deteriorates. Emotional interactions between patients and professionals are essential therapeutic tools in mental health care. Their deterioration might be a core feature of burnout. You stop seeing people. You start seeing problems to solve. The helper becomes harmful. And then there's the martyr complex, savior complex's cousin. Psychologist Michelle Goldman from the Hope for Depression Research Foundation defines it: someone who sacrifices something of themselves to protect another or something of great importance. But people with martyr complex operate through this pattern intensely and pervasively. They look for opportunities to sacrifice because in the past, this behavior was rewarded. While the pattern seems selfless, clinical psychologist Carolina Estevez notes it can harm everyone involved. The martyr complex shares DNA with victim mentality. At its core, the victim complex involves viewing yourself as a victim of life events. Bad things always happen to you. You have no control. You don't take responsibility for your actions. The motives are often unconscious. The victim mentality provides safety and validation. As the victim, you don't take blame. You get attention, you're validated by support, but you sacrifice control and ability to act. You rely on others for self-worth. April 2023. Research in Mind Body Green identified the signs, engaging in self-sacrificing behavior across all situations and relationships. Not a one-off for specific loved ones, but a pervasive pattern with partner, friends, children, work, everywhere. Continuing to help people who repeatedly don't appreciate your sacrifices. The martyr recognizes efforts go unacknowledged and continues anyway, minimizing accomplishments. You dismiss your actions, saying it's not important when you make sacrifices. You do it for the feeling, not the praise. Being the hero syndrome. You do everything yourself, solving everyone's problems without complaint. Lacking self-care. You can't pour from an empty jug. If you constantly give and let your personal health slip, you're exhibiting martyr patterns, seeking chances to sacrifice. Like the victim complex, a martyr looks for opportunities to step into harm's way, having unrealistic values, viewing your actions as expressions of how much you care. As a result, you have imbalance in relationships and unrealistic expectations for what others can give in return. You feel defeated, like nothing you do is ever enough. If you internalize that over time, it results in depression, anxiety, self-doubt, low self-esteem, difficulty with decision-making, lack of agency or self-control. Psychologist Ramon Ford notes that when it's a true martyr complex, you have the propensity to persistently carry out self-sacrificing behaviors. You're always sacrificing. That imbalance over time leads to resentment. Looking back on past relationships reveals martyr tendencies. Psychologist Patrick Cheatham suggests asking yourself these questions. Do you describe relationships as somehow unequal? Maybe you feel all you do is take care of partners who do little to meet your needs. Do you feel a consistent lack of space to discuss your own needs and wants? Do you believe not meeting your partner's needs would put your relationship at risk? On the emotional side, do you feel supported, secure, and loved even during periods of inequality? Or do you feel bitter, resentful, or let down? Perhaps you even want them to feel guilty for not supporting you more. According to therapist Sharon Martin, people with martyr tendencies often have hard times communicating clearly or directly, leading to relationship issues. Instead of talking openly about needs, you might use passive aggression or have angry outbursts when you continue swallowing resentment. If you think you've made a lot of sacrifices and they don't show gratitude, you might feel angry or dissatisfied. Martyrs struggle to prioritize their needs. They don't practice self-care. They end up exhausted, physically sick, depressed, anxious, resentful, and unfulfilled. It describes families where personal boundaries are diffused, subsystems undifferentiated, and overconcern for others leads to loss of autonomous development. February 2025. Research in Simply Psychology defines it as extreme emotional closeness, where personal boundaries become blurred or non-existent. In enmeshed relationships, individuals are overly involved in each other's lives to the point where autonomy disappears. July 20-23. Research in Psych Central lists the signs. There's lack of emotional and physical boundaries. You don't think about what's best for you or what you want. It's always about pleasing or taking care of others. You feel responsible for other people's happiness and well-being. You're guilted or shamed if you want less contact or make a choice that's good for you. The responsibility of taking care of parents when you aren't emotionally mature enough. Role confusion where children are expected to take care of parents or are treated as friends or confidants. In healthy families, children are encouraged to become emotionally independent. To separate, pursue goals, become themselves, not to become extensions of parents or to take care of parents. In enmeshed families, these boundaries don't exist. Parents overshare personal information. They don't respect privacy. They rely on their child for emotional support or friendship. They don't allow children to make their own decisions and mistakes. March 2025. Research at Chiron Clinics notes that parentification can be intergenerational. Adults compensate for their childhood losses by reversing roles with their own children. The pattern passes down through generations. Assuming a parental role in childhood is exhausting and leads to depression and anxiety as an adult. Many feel they weren't allowed to express emotions as children because no one would have been there to support them. The parent-child relationship evolved to protect the child long enough to carry the parent's genes to a new generation. However, as evolutionary anthropologists point out, a parent's need to reproduce doesn't map exactly onto a particular child's need for nurturing care and may be in conflict. Preoccupied by their own needs, Parents may be unable to adequately meet a child's needs. The parent contributes to a family system where the child tries to take over psychological and social functions usually performed by the parent. The result? Children who become adults who can't stop trying to fix everyone. Codependent behaviors include lack of boundaries, less focus on self, trying to control partner, separation anxiety, becoming obsessed with focusing on partner's behaviors. These behaviors lead to communication and trust problems, which lead to lower relationship satisfaction. Divorce rates globally sit at 40 to 50%, with behavioral patterns in marriage as a major factor. Regarding domestic violence and abuse, an estimated 35% of married women globally experience some abuse and remain in the relationship. Why? Trauma bonding. An unhealthy or dangerous attachment style. Kids rely on parents to nurture their physical and emotional development. And when parents don't do this, the child doesn't blame the parent. They blame themselves. Pete Walker, an expert on complex trauma, says many children who experience childhood trauma develop fawning behaviors in response. Holly calls fawning a survival skill. Substance use and behavioral addictions may be forms of fight, flight, and freeze responses. They can also be part of fawning behavior by allowing you to cover up or change negative feelings. Trauma bonding occurs when you feel like you can't leave someone even if they hurt you. You feel it's your responsibility to fix them. Research shows feelings in trauma bonding include feeling sorry for your abuser, making excuses for harmful behavior, covering for them when they hurt you, feeling anxiety when they're upset with you, feeling you owe them loyalty despite mistreatment. January 2025. Research in Psychology. Today by Yvonne Castaneda identifies the process. Breaking free from savior complex isn't about abandoning your desire to help. It's about finding balance and learning that your value isn't defined by how much you do for others. You don't need to save everyone. You're already enough just as you are. Recognition comes first. Identifying codependency gives you a way to make sense of and move on from past trauma. Find a therapist familiar with codependency, attachment disorder, post-traumatic stress, and substance use disorders. They can validate your feelings and help you find ways to give up unhealthy behaviors. Work to identify and experience feelings. Recognize and explore personal emotions rather than those you're told to feel. Establish boundaries. Boundary setting helps tell other family members what they are and are not allowed to do. Consider your needs. Learn to consider personal happiness rather than endless self-sacrifice. Communicate needs. Once you've recognized personal needs, make others aware of them. Take steps toward autonomy and independence. Strive toward owning your decisions, goals, and problem solving. Sharon Martin, a licensed psychotherapist in California, published October 2021 Guidance in Psychology Today. Express your needs. If you're not getting what you need in relationships, it's time to start asking for it. People can't read your mind or read between lines of passive-aggressive comments. You must explicitly and kindly tell them, "This will feel strange. You're trying to undo some long-time pattern. It takes practice to figure out what you're feeling and what you want. Give yourself time and practice." Set boundaries. When you start to express needs, you may fear rejection or worry you'll end up alone. Start with small requests or changes. Maybe tell your coworker you can't cover for him while he's on vacation. Tell your partner you need an hour of personal time this weekend. Some people may be angry when you set boundaries. Choose who stays in your life. Are you willing to sacrifice your health and happiness for someone else? If you must have a relationship with such a person, can you change anything to minimize the harm? It's not easy to distance yourself from friends, family, or lovers even when they take advantage or disrespect you. And if you're not ready to, that's okay. Just knowing you have choices, even if you choose not to exercise them, can free you from martyrdom and victim mindset. January 2025. Research at Insight's Life Management Science Labs outlines self-reflection methods. Analyze your behavior and motivation behind it, achieved through recognizing and understanding your emotions and needs. Look at yourself as an object and create objective evaluations based on that. Examine past relationships to identify recurring patterns and behaviors that indicate codependency or attachment issues. Avoid allowing desire for attachment to result in unhealthy codependency. The Light Triad study from the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga in 2025 found something unexpected. Light Triad traits include optimism, empathy, and compassion, theorized to be prosocial and compassionate orientation. But in romantic relationships, those qualities may encourage savior complex, where one partner attempts to help, fix, or change their partner's less ideal components. 106 participants aged 18 to 24 were surveyed. Those who engaged in more savior complex behaviors were higher in Light Triad overall, humanism, and Kantianism. Perceived partner responsiveness was a significant mediator. These results emphasize the potential downsides of a highly positive romantic partner. Even good traits, taken to extremes, create harm. A 2020 research in Healthline on attachment trauma and codependency explains that trauma is an intense emotional response to shocking or hurtful events, especially those that threaten considerable physical harm or death. What's traumatic to you may not be traumatic to someone else. What matters is that you perceived or experienced the event as intensely and gravely threatening to your safety. A traumatic event may leave you with extreme sense of powerlessness. It can affect you in many ways. Trauma may cause you to lose faith in your beliefs and in people, including yourself. Research suggests trauma sometimes leads to post-traumatic stress disorder. With codependency, you may feel you need someone else to exert control over you to gain sense of direction in everyday problem solving or tasks. Childhood trauma results from early abuse or neglect and can lead to complex post-traumatic stress or attachment disorder. Primary symptoms include dissociation and intrusive memories. Codependency may be a symptom of or defense against post-traumatic stress. According to psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, trauma can alter our brain's physical structure and impact emotional stability, making it more difficult to build healthy, satisfying relationships. However, recovery is possible. Survivors can overcome codependent tendencies and establish relationships based on respect and independence by addressing underlying causes of trauma and learning how to better care for themselves. Trauma affects not only the brain, but stores itself in the body and nervous system, often leading to negative physical impacts. To treat these symptoms, research suggests mindfulness techniques such as yoga, meditation, and somatic therapies, including neurofeedback and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, can help process emotions in safe spaces while restoring connection between mind and body. Learning to set boundaries, particularly how to say no without feeling guilty, is another important part of recovery and is important for overcoming codependency. Therapy can be a very useful tool for respecting one's own needs and creating healthy relationships. Reestablishing a sense of self is important because trauma can cause people to feel isolated or worthless. Journaling, painting, or dancing are examples of creative practices that can help people rediscover who they are and regain sense of autonomy. If you value documented psychology and behavioral science research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Clinical Psychology's comprehensive systematic review published June 2018 in European Psychiatry, examining 9,409 mental health professionals, and research from family systems theory documented by Salvador. Minuchin's foundational work on boundaries and enmeshment published in his 1974 text, Families and Family Therapy. Now back to the information. A November 2024 study in BMC Psychology examined factors affecting healthcare worker burnout. The burnout syndrome is a global challenge for healthcare systems worldwide, affecting from 25 to 75% of healthcare professionals. Research confirmed burnout syndrome should be considered a multidimensional phenomenon. Accordingly, the syndrome should be studied using different research methods that complement each other. For holistic study of factors influencing burnout, results from quantitative research methods should be complemented with in-depth exploration of individual experiences using qualitative research methods or mixed methods approach. One of the determining factors is professional cooperation with superiors. It's still not studied how exactly the hyperfunctional or dysfunctional role of superiors contributes to development of burnout. Reorganizing work process, selecting staff according to demand, allocating responsibilities by existing resources, recognizing early signs of burnout syndrome, modifying stress factors, and developing and implementing organizational policies that improve both quality of work and individual and professional life of the employee, in addition to offering emotional support and incorporating integrative and complementary practices. These strategies can have positive impact on physical and mental health and well-being of healthcare workers. They may also improve quality of patient care and patient-centered holistic healthcare approach. Burnout consists of three components: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization of clients, and feelings of ineffectiveness or lack of personal accomplishment. Emotional exhaustion may include feeling overextended, being unable to feel compassion for clients, feeling unable to meet workplace demands. Depersonalization is the process by which providers distance themselves from clients to prevent emotional fatigue. This reduces people to problems. It strips humanity from helping. A 2020 study examining causes and consequences of burnout among mental health professionals reviewed 44 quantitative and qualitative studies from the past decade. Factors influencing burnout include perceived job control, nature of psychotherapists' caseload, countertransference reactions, supervisory support, and psychotherapists' mental health history. Burnout affects psychotherapists' general well-being as well as the extent to which clients engage in and benefit from psychotherapy. the helper helping others while falling apart themselves, the fixer unable to fix their own brokenness. The Psychology of Self-Sacrifice, published in American Psychological Association research by Jocelyn Belanger and colleagues in 2014, created a new tool to quantitatively assess individuals' propensity toward self-sacrifice. 8 studies investigated the concept. Martyrdom is defined as psychological readiness to suffer and sacrifice one's life for a cause. Studies focused on Scales' predictive validity, especially as it relates to extreme behaviors. Self-sacrifice was positively related to motivational constructs such as harmonious and obsessive passion, as well as goal commitment and valuation of the cause. As expected, self-sacrifice was not related to depression and suicide ideation. Multiple regression analyses indicated that meaning in life and altruism were both positive predictors of self-sacrifice, controlling for fatalism, optimism, and belief in higher power. Self-sacrifice was found to be a good predictor of altruism and meaning in life above and beyond all other control variables. These results coincide well with theoretical definition and how martyrs are generally perceived. Individuals acting for something greater than themselves. The double-edged sword appears. Martyrdom can lead either to prosocial or to destructive behaviors. Therefore, akin to philanthropists or terrorists, self-sacrifice itself is neither inherently good nor bad. It depends on the cause, the context, the underlying motivation. Are you sacrificing from a place of wholeness or woundedness? Are you giving because you're full or because you're trying to fill a void? That distinction matters. April 2024. Jungian analysis published in This Jungian Life examined the interplay between selflessness and selfishness in martyr complex. Individuals may see themselves as figures of resilience or sanctity, feeling their suffering is noble and purposeful. Public perception wields significant influence on this behavior. Individuals frequently seek validation for their sacrifices, yearning for affirmation of significance of their pain. The interplay involves psychological projection and identification. In childhood in particular, the individual is subtly identified with the suffering figure. Control and manipulation are expected, with sufferers using their pain to influence others, making personal suffering a tool for interpersonal dynamics. This manipulation can maintain relationships or elicit specific behaviors, serving multiple purposes. The implications extend into social and cultural contexts, serving as narrative tool to galvanize movements, shift opinions, or inspire action. The perception of this behavior as selfish or selfless depends on underlying motives and individual awareness. There's significant difference between helping people out of genuine kindness and helping people to be perceived as kind. For individual with martyr complex, the latter inflates their ego. They're compassionate only because their compassion is driven by desire to be praised and approved by others. Martyr syndrome involves self-sacrifice behaviors coupled with strong desire to receive acknowledgement from others for these sacrifices. It's a trait where the individual persistently serves others' needs, even at expense of their well-being. Martyr prioritizes others over themselves. It's often associated with victim complexity and codependency. They derive satisfaction from playing the role of martyr, viewing it as a source of superiority and pride that will make them noble in eyes of others. Unlike those with victim complex, individuals with martyr complex deliberately place themselves in situations that'll make them victims, where self-sacrifice is inevitable, and refuse to entertain any other alternatives, all in pursuit of getting validation from others. Soren Kierkegaard's words define it clearly. The tyrant dies, and his rule is over. The martyr dies, and his rule begins. The complex makes individuals transfer guilt, shame, and sorrow to another person to evade any responsibilities. They tend to be heroes concealing hidden villain within. Some causes that could contribute to development of martyr complex include low self-esteem. If someone has low self-esteem and constantly seeks approval from others to boost it, they may develop martyr complex, frequently discussing their sacrifices until acknowledged. Dr. Patrice Legoy, licensed marriage and family therapist and psychologist, noted that anyone can develop martyr complex, but it's more prevalent in environments such as work and family dynamics. When she sacrifices her career to raise children, a typical mother does so without expectation, understanding it as necessary sacrifice for family's well-being. However, a martyr mother approaches sacrifice differently, strategically playing this card for future leverage. In family dynamics, such mothers readily engage in self-sacrifice, believing it noble and selfless, often seeking acknowledgement for their commitment to family's welfare. In work context, individuals with martyr complex often take on excessive workloads or responsibilities, showing themselves as dedicated and selfless, but really seeking validation through visible suffering. Those suffering from martyr complex possess deeply neurotic core belief that they are bad and thus must reassure themselves of their innocence through self-sacrifice and displays of self-aggrandizement. Unfortunately, the martyr's deep-seated belief that they are inherently unworthy means they unconsciously attract or set up situations where they will be abused or taken for granted, consequently manipulating and guilt-tripping others, thus reconfirming their belief that they are bad, and therefore deserve bad things. Essentially, if you live with a martyr, you'll find they are constantly finding ways to prove they are good, while at the same time inviting situations that make them feel bad. For example, staying in abusive relationships, allowing themselves to be used, stirring up unnecessary arguments, creating drama. Others adopt roles of equality, others accept roles of submission. Your role has been the self-sacrificing nurturer. In other words, your role has been elevated above other people, because other people have become dependent on you in one way or another. Thankfully, you can change this. You need to step out of your nurturer role and explore different roles that are authentic to you and feel honest. Examples of healthy roles include the listener who hears without immediately problem solving, the equal who shares responsibility, the boundary setter who says no when needed, the authentic communicator who expresses needs clearly. Always ask yourself, is this a healthy role? Am I elevated above, below, or am I acting as equal to this person? Always seek roles that create equality both for yourself and for the other. Structural family therapy, originated by Meinechin, works on changing family and couple interaction patterns and strengthening boundaries. Group support, such as codependency support groups like Codependence Anonymous, can be beneficial as individuals hear others' experiences and learn strategies to set boundaries and honor their own needs. February 2023, research at Attachment Project on Family Enmeshment notes that through therapy you can build healthy boundaries and address underlying issues including attachment difficulties. Enmeshment in families can be detrimental to mental and emotional well-being of everyone involved, particularly children. Enmeshed children may struggle to make their own mark in the world and carve their own paths. Family enmeshment is associated with anxious attachment, with maternal anxiety exacerbating enmeshment. However, mothers and fathers can both exhibit enmeshment behaviors, and enmeshment can be passed down transgenerationally. If you've identified patterns of enmeshment in your family, know that breaking free is possible. It takes time and effort, but can lead to greater independence, autonomy, and healthy relationships. Even if you've experienced enmeshment from a very young age, it's important to remember it's never too late to start living your life on your own terms. Setting clear boundaries promotes healthy relationships and better adaptation to various expectations of you and your responsibilities within your family and outside this unit. One of most vital steps in breaking free from family enmeshment is carving out your own identity. When families become enmeshed, family members, particularly children, tend to lose sense of their identity, their interests, values, and goals. Developing your identity can help you recognize what's important to you, including what you wish to pursue in life. Some research examining parentification noted mechanisms and impact may vary in different cultures. Adult role-taking may appear to be part of cultural norms in regions, such as Southeast Asia, where children hold filial responsibility. Asian parents usually delegate child care functions to older siblings due to large number of children in many families. In specific places or situations, social, economic, or psychological issues may cause children to assume adult roles. The line between cultural expectation and psychological harm isn't always clear. What's considered normal in one context may be traumatic in another. Intent matters, support matters, whether the child has choice matters, whether their own needs are still met matters. Research at BrightQuest Treatment Centers, published March 2024, examines how trauma can result in codependency. Healthy, supportive relationships are important for recovering from and minimizing impact of trauma. But too often, relationships become codependent, veering into an unhealthy pathway that harms both individuals. Childhood trauma, complex trauma, and current or recent trauma can all contribute to codependent relationship. Many people experience trauma as children, and few were given resources to cope with it. Research has shown adverse childhood experiences, largely traumatic, have lasting impacts on people. Childhood trauma is often root cause of codependency. They don't always result, but for many people, codependent relationships are a response to unaddressed past traumas. One reason may be that childhood trauma is usually family-centered. Abuse, neglect, domestic violence, or even just divorce and fighting. Without good model for healthy relationships, many people carry these examples into adult relationships. On the other end of spectrum, traumatized child may grow into adult who needs to care for or have someone depend on them, providing the other side of codependent relationship. Not all codependent relationships are abusive, although all are unhealthy and harmful. In some cases, though, the codependent is emotionally or physically abused by other person in relationship. If you've ever felt ashamed or weak for being unable to leave your abusive relationship, you may be experiencing trauma bonding. It's a coping mechanism for a traumatic situation in which you feel loyalty to and dependence on your abuser. It often occurs when abuser goes through cycles of abuse and affection. They treat you badly, but always go back to pattern of being loving and caring. Trauma bonding can even occur without genuine abuse. When a relationship is codependent, even without overt abuse, you can develop this attachment and loyalty to someone who isn't good for you. Breaking trauma bond is difficult but possible. Treating codependency involves recognizing and changing harmful and damaging relationship patterns. However, most effective way to make lasting positive changes is to get to root of problem and to process past or ongoing traumas. For individual, traumatized, trauma-focused therapies, begin process of reliving, reframing, and healing from those experiences. Trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, experiential therapies, milieu therapy, and other types of therapy can help you face up to difficult past in safe, supportive setting. Getting treatment for individual with trauma is essential, but to truly heal relationships, everyone must be involved. Family therapy helps everyone understand patterns. Couples therapy addresses dynamics between partners. Individual therapy gives each person space to work through their own wounds. The recovery process isn't linear. Some days you'll set boundaries successfully. Other days you'll fall back into old patterns. That's normal. Change takes time, especially when you're rewiring neural pathways formed in childhood. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories. Notice when you say no without guilt. Recognize when you let someone solve their own problem. Acknowledge when you prioritize your own needs. These moments matter. They're evidence you're healing. They're proof you're becoming who you were meant to be before trauma taught you your worth depended on usefulness. When caring becomes consuming, when you lose yourself in the process of saving others. True helping empowers. False helping creates dependency. True helping respects boundaries. False helping violates them. True helping comes from overflow. False helping comes from emptiness. True helping asks permission. False helping assumes it knows best. True helping honors autonomy. False helping needs to control. True helping can walk away. False helping is terrified of abandonment. Murray Bowen's concept from family systems theory. Differentiation refers to individuals' ability to maintain their identity while staying emotionally connected. Enmeshment represents low differentiation, where partners become so emotionally fused that their sense of self depends entirely on others' presence and approval. High differentiation means you can be close without losing yourself. You can care without becoming consumed. You can help without needing to be needed. You have clear sense of where you end and others begin. You take responsibility for your own emotions. You don't take responsibility for everyone else's. You offer support. You don't offer solutions nobody asked for. You're present. You're not a presence that takes over. Create space for your own desires. Schedule time for activities that fill you up. Say no to requests that drain you. Let people face natural consequences of their choices. Allow others to struggle without rushing in. Sit with discomfort of not being needed. Challenge thoughts that tie your worth to usefulness. Remind yourself you're valuable simply for existing, not for what you do, not for what you provide, for who you are. Find relationships with mutual give and take. Connect with people who respect your boundaries. Join groups where codependency and attachment issues are understood. Attend therapy consistently. Work with professionals who specialize in trauma and family systems. Do the hard work of processing childhood wounds. Grieve what you didn't get. Mourn the childhood you deserved. Rage at the unfairness. Cry for the little version of you who learned to survive by being indispensable. Then slowly, gently learn a new way. Learn you can be loved without earning it. Learn you can be valued without proving it. Learn you can take up space without apologizing for it. Learn rest without guilt. Learn play without purpose. Learn presence without performance. First toward yourself, then toward others. From a place of wholeness instead of woundedness. You're not becoming selfish. You're becoming whole. You're not leaving people behind. You're teaching them they can stand on their own. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable. Sometimes the kindest choice is letting go. Sometimes saving yourself is the first step to genuinely helping others. Not from obligation, not from fear, not from need, but from choice, from love, from overflow. The way out is possible. It requires courage to look at yourself honestly. It demands patience to change lifelong patterns. It needs support to navigate the process. But on the other side of this work lives a version of you who's free. Free from the compulsion, free from the guilt. Free from the exhaustion, free to help when you choose, free to rest when you need, free to be human instead of hero, free to connect instead of control, free to live instead of just survive. What would it feel like to stop carrying everyone? What would open up if you let people struggle without rushing in? Who would you be if your worth wasn't tied to usefulness? What would relationships look like built on mutual respect instead of need? What dreams have you postponed because someone might need you? What boundaries have you avoided because someone might be upset? What parts of yourself have you abandoned to make room for everyone else? They reveal the path from helper to healer, from fixer to witness, from savior to equal, from exhausted to rested, from resentful to joyful, from dependent to differentiated, from trapped to free. The journey starts with one honest conversation with yourself, one small boundary, one gentle no, one moment of choosing you, one step toward the person you've always been underneath the pattern. That person is still there, waiting, ready, worthy, just as you are, without fixing anyone, without saving everyone, without proving anything, just being. That's enough. You're enough. You always were. You. In March 2025, a therapist working with enmeshment cases reported finding a journal entry from a woman who'd spent 40 years as the family fixer. She wrote, "I finally understand. I wasn't helping them. I was hiding from myself. The day I stopped needing to be needed, I started actually living." That journal entry now sits in therapy training materials. One woman's revelation documented, archived, shared. A reminder that the person who tries to fix everyone eventually faces one final question. What if the person I really needed to save was me all along?